Kia ora guys, and welcome back to the Plant Power Podcast. This is the seed of the week, where I come to you each week and I plant a seed in you, which is going to grow, and then you're going to become an amazing, incredible human being. Simple as that, easy. Nah, jokes. I pretty much just come to you each week with a little seed of wisdom or inspiration or motivation, just to, bring some knowledge and education into your life, because I'm all about expanding your consciousness and helping you grow and all that kind of stuff. And I've changed it to Friday now, so it can be like a Friday thing that you can take on into the weekend. And my name is Dylan Steeples. The Plant Power Podcast is coming to you all the way from New Zealand, and I hope you are loving it. So these stories are meant to be nice and short, so I'll keep it nice and short. Remember to subscribe and leave a review on iTunes, and head over to the Patreon page and donate some money, because that would be awesome. And like I always do, I want to dedicate this podcast, so it's number 13, to a listener or a supporter. So this is from Instagram, and it's a guy I have been talking to for a while now, and his name is Adrian. And Adrian, I'm sorry, I'm probably gonna butcher your last name, but I'm gonna do my best. Adrian Barniak, from Alaska, United States. And yeah, you just been talking to you on Instagram and stuff, and you're just such a genuine, nice guy, and I just wanted to dedicate this podcast to you. You might not even be into spiritual type of stuff, but I'm dedicating it to you anyway, Adrian. So thank you for your support. I love you. And now let's get on to the podcast. So a good place to start would be talking about the ego. So we all know what the ego is. It's our identity in the material world, or it can be considered what we could call our role in this world. It is what one associates with oneself. So for me, my ego is that I am Dylan. I am a podcaster, a runner, and a vegan. And we create our ego, and it is what we attach to and delusion ourselves into thinking that it's who we are. And it is this attachment to I that causes all the suffering, because ultimately, the ego is searching for something that doesn't exist. It's attaching onto things like emotions. It's attaching onto things like feelings and material objects, which can never satisfy us, and so the ego is never happy. And that's where suffering comes from. So that's where spirituality comes in. Spirituality is being aware of this ego, being first and foremost aware that there is a part of you, the self that exists that isn't you. And it is realizing that, this is where enlightenment comes in, or nirvana, which literally means blowing out. Nirvana translates to blowing out the fire of the ego or connection to self, blowing out the fire of the constant craving and aversion that dominates our mind. Realizing that we can't attach to these external things because they are constantly arising and passing away. So what I mean by that is the things that the ego attaches to are so fluid. They're always changing. They're going to come and then they're going to pass away. They don't last forever. All these things are always changing. And for me, at the core of spirituality is a meditation practice, which is teaching me experientially this truth that I talked about, that everything is always arising and passing away. It is a practice for unattaching from the sense of self, unattaching from our ego, dropping the I, which doesn't exist. Really, it doesn't really exist, guys, unless it's in an illusion. So our self and our ego, our sense of self, is an illusion. So how does spiritual materialism come into this? And so if spirituality is about non-attachment and leaving the I behind, then we don't want to be doing things that are adding to the sense of self or ego. But when we start getting spiritual, our ego can just freak out, and what it will do is that it can start attaching to certain aspects of your spirituality or meditation practice. And this is growing the ego or sense of self rather than separating from it, which is the goal of spirituality. And we can be spiritually materialistic in a number of ways, but the best example is our appearance. So if you start attaching to dressing in yourself in beads and necklaces and wearing shirts that say spiritual gangster, yes, we are creating a different sense of self, but all we are truly doing is adding more layers onto our sense of self and ego. And because the point is to separate oneself from self, by attaching to material objects like clothes, we are bolstering our ego, and your ego is getting what it wants. So it freaks out, and it can see that you're kind of doing this surgery by being more mindful and doing meditation. You're doing this surgery to separate yourself cleanly and nicely, to cut all the tendons and attachments from yourself, to not being associated with yourself. So the ego freaks out and it's like, what can I do? So it starts attaching onto the process of, or the experience of, spirituality. Another way is attaching to or letting your meditation practice be a part of yourself. So, for example, like a great example like this is if you're showing yourself meditating on Instagram, or you're doing it because it's part of a fad, like you're part of this meditation thing because everyone else is doing it. You're using it to kind of create a sense of self, and not doing it for the real reason. And so again, all you're doing by showing people that you're meditating every day on Instagram or Facebook or something like that is you're just kind of adding to your sense of self, but in a different way. And it becomes more of your ego. And another way also is that during meditation, you can have these really, really amazing experiences. I have them myself, where you kind of have this experience of no mind, or that would be called little snippets of nirvana or enlightenment. And again, as soon as you give a name to this thing, or you kind of give a role or associate with these experiences, they become material objects. And the thing is that with nirvana, like the way nirvana or enlightenment is described is like a wisp of smoke. And by attaching to these little wisps of smoke that you experience during meditation, it's your ego trying to grasp at the ungraspable. And in the Tao Te Ching, Tao is called, or it's described as, is that which is nameless. So we can't put a name. There's no association or label or anything you can put to enlightenment or nirvana, because it's just impossible. So as soon as we try to associate it with something in the material world, it doesn't exist anymore, and it becomes a material thing and a part of like your sense of self. So in conclusion, I think what I'm really trying to say is that I hope I enlightened you to this idea of spiritual materialism, and that it's hard when you start getting into meditation in a more spiritual way of living. It's, you go down the things of, you maybe do want to dress differently, or you do want to tell people about your meditation practice because you really care about it and you want them to start doing it. But it's important to remember that attaching to these things and letting them be part of your ego or your sense of self is really ironic, because you're going in the opposite direction of the reason behind why you would want to be spiritual or meditate in the first place. So be really, really, really honest with yourself. Are you searching for enlightenment or nirvana, or are you just looking for another part of your sense of self or ego? I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening. Have a wonderful weekend. I love all of you. Peace and namaste.